Hey guys, welcome back to In the Endrows, the podcast where we talk to farmers and modders alike. Today I am very happy to be joined by AW Modding. Say hi.
Hello.
Hey, so you are AW Modding. Is there a name that you'd like me to call you by?
You can call me Austin.
All right,
So most
Austin
people
it
know me
is.
as,
Austin of AW Modding. Austin Woolard, right? On Facebook?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. All right, yeah, it's very nice to get together and talk to you, kind of have one of these with you. You're a really interesting guy. It's really cool to kind of get to know you a little better. So, how
Appreciate
you
it.
been? Have you been recently? How have things been looking?
Been good, just making mods.
That you
As
have.
most time it is.
Yeah, you
Um,
certainly have. What have you been making recently?
Mostly just my usual stuff. My latest thing that I've making, I haven't really posted many pictures about it, but it's a RBR vector
Yeah,
spreader and the Venturi spreader as well.
nice.
Probably posted on my page at some point, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. If you want to see that stuff, go check out his page, Eddie will be modding. But let's kind of get into this. Let's kind of get to know you a little better. So, let's learn a little bit about yourself. Do you have a history with farming in general? Like what's your history with farming? Do you have any interesting stories or tidbits?
I've never done it as a job, but I've been around farm equipment my whole life. Our land is rented out. We live on a pretty fair amount of acres,
Mm-hmm.
and so I've always grew up around tractors. I rode in them my whole life, and I think it just from that stemmed a little bit of love for it. Can
Nice.
never really escape it, I guess.
What kind of farming have you been around? From where are you exactly?
I'm from North Carolina, so it's the
Okay.
good old southern style of farming.
Mm-hmm.
So I see cotton, tobacco, corn, soybeans, a little bit of onions. There's a dude out there that does onions.
Ooh, okay.
So a little bit of different crops than the standard Midwest stuff, I guess.
Nice. So you got some of that going on. What kind of equipment is typically around that? What size tractors do you kind of see? What kind of equipment do you see around?
Medium sized for
Okay.
sure.
Okay.
I only ever saw a like a 9R for the first time a couple months ago. They're
Oh,
not
really?
super common around me. Most you'll see is probably an 8R.
Mm-hmm.
It's that 12 row planters, discs, stuff along those lines. You don't really see air drills or nothing like that.
Oh, interesting. Okay. No, that's cool. That's cool. So you kind of have that history, that background with farming. What kind of brands are you typically around down there?
John Deere. That's
Okay.
mostly what I see. I see Case 2.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't really ever seen much of anything else, New Holland and uh, whatever other brands there are.
Well, I gotta
I,
ask because I've never heard of or been around onion farming before. What's that like?
it's different.
Okay.
It's normal but different. It's irrigated like, standard crops.
Mm-hmm.
They irrigate it
Mm-hmm.
and it's basically they just kind of plant it and I guess just, normal crop, manage it and all that stuff. The harvester is a pretty weird one. I'm not going to be able to describe it. It is sort of like a potato harvester, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
My best bet would just say to look up an onion harvester.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead and
They're
do that.
funny looking machines.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay, well that's cool. That's cool. You got kind of a unique background. Never talked to anybody that's been around onion farming or talked to anybody from that area. So that's cool. So what's your history with Farming Simulator then? So how did you transition
Um,
from being around farming to finding the virtual simulator?
so as a kid, on my mom's computer, I played 2009, I think is what I started at. And I remember it ran it absolutely horribly. It was 5 FPS at most.
Mm,
I was basically watching PowerPoint slideshows.
right.
It was pretty bad. And I just, I played it, kept buying new games, and I guess here we are at 19, and I sort of started learning to mod in 17, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
right at the end.
Yeah.
But before that, I was always just a player and just used mods.
Interesting. So do you remember which farming sim you've had the most fun with so far of all those games?
Probably, I'd say it's probably a tie between 17 or 19 because I've definitely had more fun creating my own content.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where I get my most enjoyment out of, for sure.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. Those two games definitely have a lot more going on. If you look at the player counts are always growing for farming sims. So you see a lot of people around there. So, how did
Very
you
much.
get into modding then? Because there's always a process when a person goes from playing the game to creating content for the game. And I think we'd all like to kind of just know how that started for you.
Editing. Editing was I think the main gateway for most people, and it was no different for me. Started out just tweaking mods to make them more what I wanted. So, if I want to change a tire setup, change it from like some Michelins to Firestones or something along those lines. Just simple stuff, little tweaks,
Hmm.
and just kind of building the stuff the way I wanted it,
Mm-hmm.
but obviously within the limits of Giants Editor.
Do you remember exactly what the first mod you ever edited was?
There is no telling. It. I have edited many
Yeah.
back then. I was tweaking something. I always was picky about one thing. If this wasn't the exact way I wanted it, I'm gonna tweak it to be the way that I wanted it. So
Mm-hmm.
there's really no telling what it was.
Do you remember the point where you transitioned from just kind of editing mods to actually creating them? Because I think every modder has that point. A lot of modders start the way you did, right? Where they start with editing something or messing around with something. And there's always that transition point where they kind of turn around to creating their own content if they continue to like stay in that lane and elevate their skills. Do you remember what that turning point was for you?
Basically, it was just to the point where I kind of was at the end of the road for editing stuff, and I learned about 3D modeling, and I kind of learned about Blender, and I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna give this a shot. And I still remember the first model I ever made. It was quite bad, but it was also dirt simple.
What's that?
It was a so on a 6R, they
Mm-hmm.
have the little warning triangle over the fender,
Yep.
and I did the little bracket that holds it over the fender. That was the first model I ever made.
Huh.
I actually stumbled across the a picture of it the other day, which reminded me of that.
Oh, interesting. Very cool. Yeah, that entire thing is a process. So you've kind of transitioned to that, and now you're somewhat regularly generating good content. What kind of stuff have you been up to recently?
Um, I've had a couple projects. I haven't really posted a whole lot
Mm-hmm.
lately, I guess, on my page. I've less started using my page and just sort of custom modding mostly, but I've made a couple of Shepherd equipment, which is local to me.
Mm-hmm.
They're Pink Hill, North Carolina, I think, and I'm really, really used to seeing their tanks. They're super common around me, and I just wanted a bit of a spotlight and a little bit of love, because local.
Yeah, and when
And
you say tanks, you don't mean military tanks, right? Can you
no,
explain?
no,
I
no,
think what
no.
you
Well,
mean.
there
Can you
are
explain?
people that do those, but
Yeah,
no, it's
sure.
helicopter tanks. Standard fertilizer tanks that
Mm-hmm.
mount on the front of tractors and all that stuff.
Nice. That's pretty cool. So you ever been around those in person, kind of get an idea of what they actually look like?
Yeah, yeah. A long time ago, back when I was a kid, they used to. They still do, but they run tanks like that on our
Mm-hmm.
land. So that's kind of where I got the idea from it. And for the longest time, I never knew the name of the brand. I always just knew it by the S logo.
Yeah.
I never knew I think it took me 2 years to find the name of that brand
Well.
because they were just I don't even think they had a Facebook page.
Hmm.
They were just so local,
Just
I
kind of a
guess.
shop, you know? Just a
Yes,
shop making
exactly.
stuff. Oh, that's cool. That's really cool. What else have you been kind of up to? I saw you've done a sprayer thing recently.
Yeah, I did the Turbo Squid 4045 sprayer and spreader model. The spreader, thanks to Owen Smebby for buying that,
Yeah.
spoiling me.
Nice.
But I've been sitting on that sprayer model for whew, a couple years now, 3 years maybe. And I always looked at it and went, I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready for this. And
Yeah.
one day I just went, all right, I think I'm ready for this, and started doing it. And it probably turned out to be one of my best mods I've ever done.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, speaking of the best mods you've ever done, which mods are you kind of the most proud of? What are some of your greatest achievements, the things you look back on and think, "Wow, I actually did a good job on that."
Well, it. I think to most people it would probably be the Truag toolbar because I know that one gets the most traffic. I haven't met a single person that hasn't wanted that mod.
Yeah.
But to me, it's probably the Vector right now.
Right.
Um, It's my latest model.
Mm-hmm.
I've put the most time into it out of any other models.
Mm-hmm.
It's my second full-size vehicle I've ever done, and I think it turned out super well. Considering I haven't done many full-size vehicles, I've always kind of done implements.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really proud of that one and how that turned out.
That's awesome. Yeah, speaking of traffic, what kind of got you to make a modding page? Like what got you to discover the Facebook side of this community, the online side of this community, and what made you decide, okay, I need to make my own space to show off my own work?
Well, the page came long, long after, before I joined the Facebook side of things. I was in Facebook, for, I want to say early 17, but I was pretty quiet, never posted a lot. And as I started editing and, actually modding more, I was like, all right, well, I probably should have a place to post all my work, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
just sort of like a portfolio,
Yeah.
but mostly for farm sim content. So that was basically the main push behind the Facebook page.
Nice. No, that makes sense. What was the first mod you ever made that really like hit it off, where people really it really drew a lot of attention to you?
Um, there's been a couple. There's
Mm-hmm.
there's been a couple. The Wishick was big.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really care too much for the Wishick. It was kind of on a whim, and then it got leaked, and all that stuff. And I just kind of lost the drive to finish it after that. But that one was a big one. On my MediaFire, it's got 2,000 some odd downloads, and I only ever posted it on my page and left it up for like a week or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that one was a lot of hype, and I think it was the little six or the little 3-point orange sprayer that I did that wasn't even my model. It was XYZ Spain's back from 11 or 13, I don't remember.
That was
But it was
early.
his.
Was that early
Yes.
19 that you made that?
Um yeah, I think so.
Because I think I remember that being honestly one of the first like mods out there. One of the first something that wasn't a paint swap or a sticker put on something, right?
I mean, I was a huge fan of little 3-point sprayers. It's kind of what I grew up around seeing.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there wasn't nothing that sort of scratched that itch, I guess. And I apparently it's same for everybody else. Because
Yeah.
that thing I still see used.
Yep.
That's the whole reason I released the Shepherd spray is just to have something new for the people that enjoy that style of equipment.
Yeah. And what is the kind of style equipment that you really love making?
Southern. It takes zero time for me to think about that. It's 100% Southern equipment. It's a super unrepresented genre, I'd say, in farm sim. I think a lot of people do Midwest and Canadian and all the other South American and just all the other stuff, but there's really not many modders that do Southern equipment.
Hmm.
Florida, Georgia, Tennessee. Those style of equipment used in that area.
No,
So
yeah, that's an interesting and that's a fair point when I think about it. Absolutely, there are a lot of Southern people that are fans of the game, but you don't see a lot of that more specific equipment kind of being made. Like I've never seen an onion harvesting machine in Farm Sim. Clearly,
yeah, no, there's really not much for us, and that was one of my big pushes to becoming a modder. Is just I wanted the style equipment that I see, not 9Rs and 60-foot field cultivators and 100-foot planters, all
yeah,
that stuff.
yep.
Just the super big stuff that I'll never see in my lifetime unless I leave North Carolina.
Yep.
So
It's a common thread for everybody I talk to. It's always people making the thing they know, the thing they grew up with, the thing they are around, right? To
hmm
show off their corner of the world. And that's what draws people and that's what keeps people going. So, as far as Southern equipment that you don't think has enough representation, can you name any stuff off the top of your head that you think, wow, farming sim kind of needs more of this, honestly?
I feel like a lot of people would probably disagree and agree at the same time. Tobacco. I would love tobacco as a crop. It's
Mm.
something that's very regularly grown around me. I've grew up my whole life seeing it, but there is no, absolutely nothing for tobacco. There is a map with tobacco in it, but it looks like an off-brand corn texture. It looks nothing like the real thing. So
Yeah, and I guess probably the main reason for that would be there's the whole taboo around tobacco, right? But I
yes,
mean, it's probably at least frustrating for you to have grown up around that and know that and never see it anywhere in Farming Simulator.
yeah. And I think the other problem is why it's never become a thing is all the equipment is going to have to be built. There's not a single thing that's used for tobacco that's already in game. Everything is a little bit different.
It's
You
very
know, tobacco's
niche.
on, yeah, it's on 40-inch spacing, so no planters off the
Okay.
bat that run 40-inch spacing.
Okay.
There are hippers. I have done a hipper before, which, not sure if you know what that is. Basically, it's a big plow almost that ridges up rows, and you plant on top of it for irrigation.
No, I didn't know
And
that.
so basically, they do that for cotton, corn, and tobacco here.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but so there is some of that, but there's no harvesters, there's no actual logistics to go with any of it. So pretty much everything would have to be made to go with the crop.
Right. And that isn't transferable to a lot of other crops. It's all very specific to that
Yeah,
particular
it's
crop.
yes,
Huh.
yes,
Interesting. That's a really good observation. That's probably another big reason why we don't see that a lot.
yeah. I would agree. It's almost like potato equipment. Potato equipment's very specific. You're not going to see somebody using potato equipment to harvest beets. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
a very specific type of equipment for a specific crop, and obviously potatoes are more popular than tobacco, or else it probably would be the other way around. We would see
Yeah.
tobacco equipment and not potato equipment, but
Yeah, for sure. No, that's a really interesting point. Is there anything else you can think of? Anything else you ever see around that you're like, well, nobody's ever done that.
um, I mean, onions would be cool.
Mm-hmm.
They only recently started doing it here.
Okay.
So I haven't really seen it a whole lot, but it is sort of pretty niche and sod. I
Yeah.
Sod's pretty common around me. I don't know more about the Midwest, but
Oh, I
uh,
I know, and I've been to like South Central Iowa. There's sod farms around there, so I've seen it. They've got the big wide diamond tires and just,
mm,
just big open fields of just sharply cut grass.
yeah, I think sod would be a very interesting, but it's same niche as tobacco, no different.
Yep.
All the equipment would have to be specially built just for the occasion, and it's a lot of work, and it's it, especially a lot of work for one person.
Yeah, and it's a lot of work for a very niche audience. If you're
Yes,
if you're if you
yes.
want to make things that you will see a lot of screenshots of, things you'll see a lot of people enjoying, doing the little stuff like that isn't really going to do that for you. It's not the way to get big, right?
No, Lord, no. If you want to get big, just make anything John Deere. That's
Yeah.
the secret.
Yeah. And it has to be, at least
Something
60 foot wide.
Midwest. Yes,
Yep.
it's got to be something that would be used in the Midwest.
Yep. So, no, that's cool. So you found a pretty successful niche in the farming sim modding community. Do you remember any big lessons you learned when you were learning to mod, or any tips for people that do want to mod or have ever thought about it?
Start simple. Do
Okay.
not do your dream project. Don't
Yeah.
don't say like I want to learn modding to make this specific piece of equipment that's insanely complicated. Don't do it. Don't. It's not gonna go well. It's gonna look really bad at the start, and it's gonna probably turn you off to modding entirely. You'll lose the drive after that. Start something simple. Pick something that isn't a super complicated model, like Tyson was showing me the other day, a John Deere 714 chisel plow, and I mean I don't even think that thing has wires on it. I think it's just metal. It's just a big bunch of tubes of metal is all it is. And something like that I think would be a good starting project, or even something as simple as what I did. Just a simple little warning marker on a 6R just to sort of get your grips around the controls of Blender and really learn what you're doing, I guess.
Yeah. No, I will object to you saying the 714 is a simple implement, because I've done a lot of research on this. So I'm just going to tell you, it depends on what era you're talking about. If you're talking about a
Oh,
small frame early to mid 90s 714, that's fairly simple. If you're talking about anything past probably 97 or 98, gets a little more complicated, kind of a multi-layered frame, and you will have a lot of hydraulics and
I'll agree with
wires.
that. Yeah, I'll
But
agree with that actually.
no, but your point to your main point is absolutely correct. And I remember I've mentioned this on a previous podcast, but it always holds true, right?
Mm,
You will, even if what you think you did as your first project was pretty good, as you grow your skills and you look back, you will notice the difference in quality, and you might find that disheartening, and it might be difficult for you to make yourself go back and redo it to the standards that you'd prefer it to be at, because you know you've already done it, and it's going to be redoing a lot of work that's already been there, recovering a lot of ground that's already been covered. Yeah, that's a really good point. And you made another good point too that I have not brought up, is you might just burn yourself out trying to accomplish it. If you pick something that's super complicated, you might, just you might just not, just literally not have the time and the skills necessary to get done what you want to get done for that project in that certain amount of time. And that can burn you out. And you don't want to get burned out when you're trying to learn something, right? I wouldn't sit down at a piano and play, Beethoven if I was just learning for the first time. I would get exhausted and I would just give up on it. So that's another really good point that you had, is you don't want to burn yourself out and you don't want to discourage yourself immediately. Absolutely pick something simple. And I always say the first thing to do is always just edit mods, right? Because you should really work your way backwards from when you actually create a mod. It's kind of interesting, and I just had this thought and I'll kind of share it. The way you normally make a mod is, if you want to make a from scratch mod start to finish, is you start in Blender and then you move that model into the engine and then you finish with all the XML touches. And the way you kind of want to start learning to mod is going reverse, right? You kind of want to start with the XML edits, learning what things mean what and which numbers to change where. And then you want to kind of move to the Giants engine where you can actually start interacting with the model. And then kind of the final step of that process is going, back to the beginning, back to kind of Blender or Maya or what have you.
Yeah, I think you described that absolutely perfectly and way better than I did. Um, for sure. Pretty much do exactly what he said.
Yeah.
I think also a good way to learn is something I also did, but I guess I kind of forgot to mention, is I did parts for vehicles for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Don't make whole models. You don't even have to start with an implement. Let's say you just want this certain little addition to a track. You want a cooler, or you want a mounting bracket for monitors. Just start making parts for stuff. That's a good way to learn too. It's simple models, nothing crazy. You don't even need to script them half the time. You can just plop them in GE and then there you go. As long as they're in the main, transform group, they're fine. No worries in the world. So
No,
I think that's also a great way to learn.
That's a really good point, because you can start with, say, I want a muffler on a tractor. You can learn making a circle, extruding it, bending it, and then doing the most basics of UDIM, bringing it in, just plopping it into the object, and boom, there it is. And you can it's a very miniaturized experience of the whole modding process, and it's going to give you a lot. So then you can go to the XML, and then you could play with your options and turning it on and off and things like that. Absolutely. Pieces, parts, small things, those are really fun to do too, because you feel like you can contribute to something that you already like or make something that you already like better. No, that's a really good point. When you feel like you understand kind of the very basics, you can start, miniaturizing the modding process from start to finish, and then you can start growing that from there and start making more and more complex things and doing more and more complex things. So that's really cool. That's a really good point too. Making pieces and bits and things is always a great way to learn.
You can almost break it down in sections as well. You know, Basically just think of it as a chapters in a book, I guess. Chapter 1 is, let's say you just want to learn XML stuff. So you just start learning just the XML stuff. Chapter 2, you want to learn Blender. So you just start modeling some stuff, and you can throw it in game, and nothing with options or no script and nothing like that. So then, with that, you learn UDIM, you learn Blender, you learn just the basics of really putting a vehicle in game, or even just putting a model in game, I guess. And then you can go to chapter 3 and learn to combine them together. So then you have scripting plus models, and so you can just kind of stack them on top of each other and learn as you go. Really, that's kind of how I did it.
Absolutely, growing that toolbox of skills.
Yes, for sure.
It's been a really good talk. I kind of want to shift gears, and I kind of want to talk about FS19 specifically a little bit. First of all, I kind of wanted to ask, we're kind of near the end of FS19. We know what the scene looks like. We know what we have available to us. I kind of wanted to ask, what, in your opinion, personally, what are some of the greatest hits of FS19 modding? What are some of the best mods to come out? What are some of your favorite things to do, favorite maps to play on, favorite equipment to use?
This one's entirely personal,
Mm-hmm.
but I absolutely love Steenkamp's 8020. I use the hell out of that thing.
Yeah.
It's one of the few trackers I very consistently use in just about anything I'm doing. Testing, playing the game, doesn't matter. I'm using it. That and obviously, Sid stuff. Sid's always really good for really pulling out the big cards. Doing the new series 8Rs, 9Rs, the X9 Combine. He's really just he knows his market, I guess, and it's no different with custom. They know their market. The big ticket items.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's obviously a big part of it. And I really enjoyed Tyson's map. Tyson's convert, well, not really convert, but edit of Autumn Oaks. I was a big fan of Autumn Oaks in 17. Always been a big fan of that map. I think CWJ's fantastic mapper. Saddy not really mapping anymore. I wish he would continue, but people move on and people have lives. You just gotta understand that at the end of the day. But yeah, I think those are probably some of the best to really hit 19. And I guess one more thing to add is the script modders.
Yeah.
Most of the script mods, we can just throw them on a category of their own. They're automatically the best because yeah, they're just
Thank goodness
that
we have people in the
special.
community that can do that.
Yeah, I've looked at Lewis before yeah, they're complicated to
It's a
me.
whole nother ballpark as far as
Yes,
things go. So yeah,
extremely.
go check out those AW modding approved mods, the 8020, some of Sid's stuff, custom stuff, Tyson stuff. No, that's really good because we're kind of at that point now. The question becomes less and less what can we do in FS19, and we spend more time thinking about what we do have in 19. And that kind of brings us around to the elephant in the room, the big topic of discussion, Farm Sim 22, obviously going on in the community right now. Before we really get into it, do you have any just initial thoughts on FS22? What is your gut reaction? Are you buying the game? Are you not buying the game? Are you happy with it? Are you unhappy with it? What do you think?
I am middle ground. I mean, I'm gonna buy the game. There's no point in lying.
Right.
Um, I'm gonna buy the game one way or the other, whether it's good or bad. Really, it's a new game. Uh, I think it offers good enough benefits. I think some things aren't the greatest. Some of the moves they made have sort of, you know, one step forward, two steps back type stuff. But for the general improvements of the game and the way it looks, I think it's worth the money to me at least. But obviously, opinions differ between person or
No,
between.
yeah. And I asked you that question with the full understanding that that was definitely a personal question. So I'm happy to have your personal opinion on it because that's what I was looking for. That's what we're looking for here. So when we get into FS22, what are some of? It looks like a lot of their focus has been on optimization. I think that's a really big driver for people that are looking to change to FS22 because that's the sort of stuff that you can't really pack into a mod. It's kind of cool to see the sort of optimization stuff they're doing. How do you think that's going to help us?
More detailed mods is the biggest thing. With better performance comes you can add more detail and have that better performance. It's not, you can't have this very low poly model and it, runs okay at best. With better performance, you can obviously push out much higher detailed models with higher performance, which is great for everybody because higher performance means, more detailed mods that can go to consoles and go to Mod Hub and all that stuff where it's extremely picky and they have to really conserve resources specifically for console.
Yeah.
So I think that's a huge thing, a huge step forward in terms of FS.
Oh yeah, for sure. Just the ability for the engine to handle more and show us more, especially in these sort of games. It's going to be great. It's going to help with stability, mods that are okay on some computers and laggy on others. Hopefully they're going to be fine on most all. You mentioned that you think the next game took some steps forward and some steps back. What do you think are examples of steps taken forward and steps that you actually think are taken backwards?
The biggest one is their, I guess, rendition of seasons. Um, it seems like sometimes they just honestly take some of the most popular mods and just kind of watered them down a little bit. So then they took seasons, and seasons obviously had you could change the days. Some people played on 24-day seasons. and some people played on 3-day seasons. It all comes down to the person. But Giants basically just took it and went 3 days only. That's how it is. No option to change it, nothing along those lines. And I definitely think that's a step back from what the script was, because seasons had a lot of customizability to where you could really play the game how you want, and then Giants just sort of taking away that customizability, I guess.
Right, yeah, they definitely changed the implementation of seasons a little bit. If it were up to you, how would you have done it? How would you have implemented seasons?
Copy paste seasons from 17. Maybe add some stuff, change some stuff, more customizability, but for the most part, just keep it the same. There's no reason to change what isn't broken, really. I mean, it works great.
No,
There's
yeah.
really no reason to change it. It has that sort of option for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Short seasons, long seasons. If you want to play with crop moisture, you can turn that on and off. Just it's got all the options. There's not much of a reason to change it in my eyes.
Right. What they were probably scared of is just complexity creep. They were probably just worried about people not understanding it, being confused or turned off by the game, and too many options. But that is a fair point to what you said. And luckily, I don't think that's nothing a mod can't fix. Right. I mean,
No, Lord, no. I think people like Thunder or anyone that's smart with Lua's or just even maybe even base editing the game files can fix. So uh, I don't think it'll be too complicated to change. I'd hope not, but it still seems like a step back that they would just change it going into the new game instead of really keeping it the same as what was working. But it's their
right.
game, their decisions. I have no stay on what they want to do with their game. It's obviously their decision to make, and if they want to make them, they can make them.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's true. You have any thoughts on kind of the things they are pushing for Farming Sim 22 outside of optimization? Things like another new American map and base game modernized equipment. And even as of this recording, just recently, we've seen different kinds of equipment we've never seen in Farming Sim before, beyond just Americanization of standard tractors like grain augers,
Mm.
Meridian tanks. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think that is one of the things where they took a step forward and then took another two steps forward. They hit it out of the park with that stuff in terms of the new vehicles, the bins, just the new stuff. It's actually really good. Obviously, you're not going to please everybody. There's always going to be one person out there that says this is stupid, this is a waste of money, and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, that's a huge step forward coming from 19. They're putting default base game augers in with bins and just more more stuff, I guess, for people to do and more customizability in the way you want to play, which is huge. And of course, American brands. Who doesn't love that? We've always been sort of the underdogs in Farm Sim.
Yeah, no, there's definitely an approach towards that. They've definitely, from how I kind of how the vibe I'm getting is that they've listened to that feedback and they've seen the growth of sales in this game in the American market, and they've really made steps towards appealing to that. Especially, and I want to say one of the things that I've seen that I've never seen before is base game brands for trucks, right? Like we have a Mack truck in the next game, like an actual
Mm-hmm.
base game Mack truck, and not a new Freightliner or anything like that. It's a classic Mack. Like, is it a Superliner? I can't remember, but
I think so. Yeah,
yeah, it's
I'm not
a
too versed on trucks, but I
it's
think
it's a
that's what it is.
it's a classic Mack truck, which is really impressive. Now, I don't think the price that they've released kind of reflects an accurate price for that truck in real life, but I think that's more for gameplay balancing purposes.
Yeah,
But those steps towards that kind of stuff is really cool to see. It really is.
I 100% agree with that. I think they've done huge leaps and bounds for well, one the American side of things, and two just the equipment side of things. We've got branded trucks, branded semis, um, more branded equipment. It's less Lizard, and they really picked up more companies to be a part of this. And obviously the U.S. map. I I haven't been impressed with a Giants map in quite a long time. But that the U.S. map, I'm genuinely kind of excited to get my hands on it and play it. It looks really good.
That's
Um,
awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think they did a great job on the U.S. map. I think the EU map looks really good too. I think they both, whoever, took on the part of mapping for the new game did a fantastic job.
No, yeah, it looks exciting. It's exciting to see. It's cool to see.
Yes,
Yeah, and as
very
far
much so.
as more brands and less lizard stuff go, we're definitely seeing more of that, and we're even seeing a little bit more of the older stuff, which is something I think farming simulator players have always kind of asked for because when you go farming in real life, you're not using brand new equipment every day, and when you buy like a smaller horsepower tractor, you're not just buying a smaller horsepower brand new tractor. Usually you're buying an old tractor, a tractor that had
Hmm.
big horsepower in its day and doesn't anymore, but it has the power and the size you need today, older stuff. And I think we saw that with actually having a John Deere 7000 series, like one of the actually 7000 7010 series and their screenshots in the base game, which is cool to see. That's the kind of stuff that modders spend a lot of time working on and putting into the game. And it's cool to have Giants actually kind of acknowledge that and do their own rendition of that.
Yeah, I agree. I think them listening to the side of it where people wanted more older equipment. I think they really set something in with them, and they wanted to put in more older equipment, which the game was kind of lacking for 19 and for 17, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
It's always been new equipment, brand new stuff, and exactly what you said. Not everybody uses brand new equipment because that stuff's expensive.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot go out and afford a brand new 8R and 8RT and all that stuff. So having that older equipment on the market and in the game is just huge. It's less work that the modders have to do, and which allows them to bring other content into the game from the start. You know what I mean? So somebody wouldn't have to immediately start converting over, the 7000 series or the 8000 series. Could already be in the game. Just might need to edit a little bit, make it a little more American and more proper, and then that's great. It's good. Off to the next one.
Yeah, saving us time. So that kind of brings me to our next topic is modding for Farm Sim 22. I don't know everything we know about that yet, but what do you think about modding for 22? What do you think that landscape is going to look like? What do you think modders as a whole are going to kind of try to do, and what do you think you're going to try to do?
I'm definitely gonna stick to my usual. Do the stuff that hasn't been done, the unique stuff. That's always been my drive. Less of the stuff that's already been done and all that. It's already been done. What's the fun in doing it? So
Right.
always try to pick something that is would be new to the game, I guess. And I guess as per the modding scene, I think it'll sort of turn into. I think we're rounding out most of the equipment at this point. It'll sort of start turning into kind of like what I do, more niche stuff. As we have most of the new main equipment, something that everybody would consider pretty popular, has already been done. So I definitely think it'll slowly start sliding into the more niche stuff, um, and more to what the person wants, and less of just mainstream equipment.
Yeah, more wants and less needs as the
Yeah,
community's
exactly.
needs are filled, and especially as I think the modding scene in 19 is bigger than it's ever been, honestly, as
Oh,
far
for
as
sure.
people
Oh
doing
yeah.
it and paying attention to it. The rate at which things are being done and being made is crazy, and we are, like you said, approaching that point where everything that we don't have or that needs to get done is getting done practically. So we're kind of
Hmm.
we're kind of approaching kind of a point where that farming sim modding has never been to before, which is everything's done. Almost everything's done. And I
Yeah.
think it'll be interesting to see what kind of direction modders take. Do modders go into the more niche stuff, or do we actually see modders try to do something we don't actually see a lot anymore, which is try to redo things that have already been done but better?
I think
Because
that'll be a big one too.
that
Redoing stuff.
I personally hope that's a big one, because
Yeah.
these days it kind of is just a race to get whatever you can get out there as fast as possible. And the most of the time there's no comparison and there's no competition, because if you have it, you're just happy to have it. And I wonder if modders get busier, and if things get complete, if quality actually starts to matter in the eyes of people that look for mods. Are people going to pay attention to, is this X modders planter or is this Y modders planter of the exact same brand and model, which we see a little bit of that these days, but I don't feel like the community is super picky. I wonder if sentiments shift on that front. I'm not sure.
I think with more and more of the mods being produced, if they're exactly the same, I think it definitely will shift to that. But with the way things are, having one of every equipment, it'll probably be the same for a good part of 22. The standard. I'm gonna use it because I have it type thing. Not really worried too much about the quality unless you're just overly picky or a modder yourself.
Right. Yeah, I totally understand that. Do you think that so we had something for 19 that we'd never had before, which is a 3-year cycle. Do you think that longer game cycles are going to be more common, or do you think that was just kind of a one-off occurrence?
No, I think that's probably the best decision they've ever made. 3-year game cycles is perfect for this game. It gives the modding community enough time to really, like, really put the quality and the time into work, and really produce some really nice and high quality mods. And not to mention for the game devs themselves, it gives them 2 more years to really produce the game and put more features, polish the game more, just make it a better game. So I think without a doubt we'll continue to see 3-year cycles, if not maybe a 2-year cycle if they change it. But I think it'll stay a 3-year cycle, honestly.
Yeah, I think I hopefully kind of just lean on that idea. I like the 3-year cycle. I like the idea of modders not having to restart every 2 years and re-scrape together their catalogs and fight for what's theirs and relearn everything. And I know some people complain about Farming Simulator DLC, but I honestly believe that's kind of what helps Giants keep the doors open in the years between a game release and kind of just helps keep a game alive too. I personally like the fact that we kind of had Farming Sim DLCs that keep the games alive longer and help provide support in those interim years, because I don't know if we could do 3 or even longer cycles without the support of that DLC. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but I personally haven't minded it so much. I feel like it's just kind of a part of what comes with a longer game cycle, and personally, if that's the trade-off that has to be made, I'm a fan of that.
Yeah, I agree. I think DLCs probably are a large help to keeping the game being developed for those 3 years. Because I mean, game developed it's expensive.
Yeah.
You got to pay wages, licenses specifically for this game. Licensing equipment, and I guarantee that's not cheap even in the slightest. So there's a lot of money that goes into developing a game, and especially a game like Farm Sim. So I think the DLCs definitely keep the game afloat uh, to get us through that longer cycle.
Yeah. So, well, I think I had a couple more questions. I also kind of wanted to ask you if you were, say we rewind the clock about 2-3 years to the beginning of FS22 development, knowing what we know now about what the game's going to have, is there anything you would say in that board meeting or that whatever, those development, if you were lead, any features or things that you would have made sure to put in Farming Sim 22 that they ended up not adding?
3D Dirt. I don't know how hard that would have been to add. It probably would have been an entire new engine. So probably not have been possible in the first place. But still, that one would have been nice. And another thing that I honestly wanted for Eternity is rows that follow the planner. I
Yeah.
wish that was a thing. God, the amount of money I would give just to see that, just a picture of it, just to know it exists. I think that would be huge. But obviously, they are limited by their engine because it's in house. And for the people that don't understand, and I've seen this a whole lot, is why don't you make the game an Unreal Engine? Don't work like that. I wish it did, but it doesn't work like that.
Mm-mm.
To break it down, what pretty much everybody else has said, the way the game is made for modability, and you won't ever see the amount of modability that Giant's in-house engine has over Unreal Engine. We can tweak just about everything about the game. Um, with Lua's changing basically built-in game stuff, And then you have XMLs that change other things, and just the pure customizability and the vehicle scripting and all of that stuff is, it sort of has to be a custom engine. And Giants obviously isn't the size of, Activision or, you know, fucking Battlefield. So they just can't put in that much money into a new engine. They still have to deal with what they've got, basically. Work with what you're working with.
No, I think that's a good point, and I do see those occasionally of people saying the farming sim should be in another engine, and I think that's a wish that should probably just be left in the past because A, that would require an entire rework of farming sim as a whole to move it to a new engine. B, I don't mod many other games. From what I understand from researching and talking to other people, is that I think Farm Sim might be the most moddable game out there, at least the easiest game to mod out there. Well, compared to the level of detail and changes you can make to something you put in the game relative, like a layer of complexity level to the, sorry, the relative, what I'm trying to say is the relative complexity of something you can add to the game relative to the effort that it takes to put it in the game. That ratio is probably way higher for farming sim than a lot of other games. Giants themselves says there are things they do in their engine that they can't do in other engines, and people believe that or don't believe that, but frankly, I'm not a developer. I don't know coding, and I'm just not even gonna go there because I am not qualified to say whether they can or can't. There's also, there's the ability to do whatever you want to the engine. There's not having to pay licensing fees. And something that even crossed my mind is that maybe Giants sees a future in which they've made an engine so flexible that they can license it out to other companies. And that becomes an additional revenue stream for them. Maybe they could license their engine in the future for other things eventually. So I'm not sure. But, that's kind of my take on it. I think at this point, you're not going to move Farming Simulator to another engine without scrapping the whole thing from the ground up. And I think being able to play in your own garden code-wise is really nice for them. So, but yeah, no, it's kind of looping back around to my original question, talking about, those are things we've always wanted. Planters, rows that follow planters, and then like 3D tracks. I can imagine those would probably be hefty engine modifications, but I don't know if they're impossible. Rows
Well, 3D
following.
tracks has been done,
Yes,
thankfully. We
yes.
do, and now that is, it used to be such a elite thing, I guess is the easiest way I can put it. It was, you had to know, you had to be in the know to do it, basically.
Yeah.
And with that script that was released by Paint to Farm Modding, God
Mm-hmm.
bless his soul, because that's the best thing to ever happen.
Yeah.
It really opens the door for everybody to do that, which is perfect. Means more tractors come out with 3D tracks and less of the old, in with the new, because 3D tracks are definitely better.
Yeah. Because yeah, that we got to almost the end of FS19 to get that, but thank goodness we finally did. And we know Giants knew how to do it, but when I was I think earlier when I was talking about 3D tracks, I thought you meant 3D tracks in the ground. So that's kind
Oh
of
yeah, yeah,
that's
okay,
what
that
I
too. Yes, yeah.
yeah. But for 3D tracks for tracks, as far as that goes, yeah, we knew Giants had a secret recipe, and modders ourselves, people out of that circle of knowledge, finally got to be able to do it kind of near the end, which is fine. At least now we have the ability to do it, which is cool. And then rows that kind of follow planters would also imply that combines would kind of follow rows, right? And everything would kind of matter to each individual plant or row of plants, and that would be, I imagine that would probably be a fair bit of work, and that might change a little bit about modding as we do it today, but it might not be super challenging. You might just have areas that you define as, hey, this is actually where the unit is, sort of collision boxes for the rows, right? That sort of stuff.
Mm.
But that would change, how we buy tractors, how we use tractors in the game. It would make spacing matter. It would make all this other stuff important, things we kind of just take for granted. So, no, well, I think we're at about time. Thank you so much for joining me today. You were an absolute pleasure to talk to, and it was an honor to get to kind of pick your brain and get to know you a little better and kind of hear your thoughts.
I appreciate it, man. I have a lot of fun doing it. So definitely something different than what I'm used to. So I'm down for it. It's cool.
Yeah, Great. So if people are really interested in what you do, where can they go to find more out about you?
Either my page or literally just search my name on Facebook. You'll see pretty much every post I've ever done. They're in a mixture of groups, mostly, I guess, expendable modding, custom modding. Most of the larger groups is where the most of my posts are. So
And
you
that
see a
would
lot of
be
my work that way.
AW Modding, right?
Yep.
All right. That's AW Modding. Really great to have him on the show today. As for me, I am Rooster Mods. You can find me on facebook.com/roostermods. This is the YouTube channel In the Endrows. Please like and subscribe for more content. I plan to continue to talk to and get to know more farmers and modders in the future. Austin, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it.
All right.
Appreciate you inviting me. Definitely. It's cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for watching, everybody. Signing off.